ومن كفر فإن الله غني حميد وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي فالحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم ما بعد. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So everybody, today inshallah we're going to be trying to explore as many ayat as we can of this passage of Surah Luqman. The ayat under discussion are ayat number 12, this is surah number 31, ayat number 12, all the way, hopefully we can get all the way to ayat number 19. For each of the ayahs, there are a set of lessons that I'd like to make sure that you guys understand, that you guys can benefit from. I will not go back and tell you how all of this is tied to Surah Al-Asr. Again, I want you to be able to figure that out yourselves. I've already given you the 4 conditions of saving ourselves from Surah Al-Asr. I've taught you how that was related to the ayah number 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah. It is the same connection here, but I won't explain that to you. It needs to now become self-explanatory to you. You need to think about that yourselves, okay? One of the benefits I hope that comes out of this class is that you guys become people who think a lot about the Qur'an as you read it. Right? That's something that I'd like you to get out of this. I don't just want you to listen to me talk about the Qur'an, but I want you to gain your own kind of thought process about Allah's book, at least at a 101, at a basic level, about the passages that we're going to be covering. The other bit of advice that I want to give you about what to do when you're done with this stuff is my sincere advice will be to try to memorize these passages in this order. Just memorize, little by little, one at a time, and kind of develop a relationship with at least these ayat. Because they'll serve as a real great foundation for you, inshallah, throughout your youth life, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so in any case, now we're looking at this amazing, amazing passage of the Qur'an in Surah Luqman, in which a father is going to give advice to his son. And this man, according to most scholars, is actually not a prophet. His name is Luqman. He's not a prophet. He's a very wise man. Allah has granted him wisdom. And what's the first thing to note here that I want you to think about is the fact that the Qur'an is only about 600 pages. And 600 pages in an English book is a lot, but 600 pages of the Mus'haf is actually very, very little. And the reason it's very, very little is because there's about 15 lines in a page at the most. 15 lines in a page. In an English textbook or whatever, you have like 30 lines. It's because it's smaller print, right? So it's a really small book. When you actually look at a translation of the Qur'an that's only English, it's actually pretty small. Now, the reason that's important to note is this is the last communication Allah decided to have with humanity. It's the last communication. As a matter of fact, if you compare the size of the Qur'an with the size of the Torah, the book given to Musa alayhi salam, or at least what we have of the Torah, it's at least 5 to 6 times bigger than the Qur'an. It's massive. It's huge. It's actually 5 books. They call it the 5 books of the Bible. Okay? Now, so the Qur'an is very brief. The point is, the Qur'an is very brief. Now, within the Qur'an, even if you read it a little bit, you probably notice that there's a lot of repetition. That the Qur'an repeats itself. So number one, it's brief, and on top of that, it's also repeating itself, which means the ideas presented in the Qur'an are actually very, very few. It's very, very few. Now that raises the question, if this is the last time Allah is directly communicating with us in the form of a message, right? This is the direct communication from Allah in the form of a message, and it's the last time. Why is it so brief? And why is it repeating itself? Because it's not the same as just writing a letter. It's not the same as writing a letter. This is actually something that Allah decided to call or describe as He was giving the Qur'an. He decided not just to call it a revelation, a wahi, He also decided to call it allama al-Qur'an. He taught the Qur'an, a teaching. This is a teaching. And a message or a letter or an email or back in the day a fax or whatever, that's not the same as a teaching. The purpose of a teaching is to make sure you get it. Right? It's to make sure not just that a message is delivered, but rather you understand it. Now, for a teacher, you guys know this already, for a good teacher, is there a lot of repetition in his class? In a good teacher's class? Absolutely. There's a lot of review. There's a lot of examples. If you don't understand the first time the teacher gives an example, he gives you another example. Then he gives you another example. So he repeats himself in like a number of different ways. So hopefully if, version 1 didn't hit you, or the first type of example didn't hit you, the second one might, the third one might, something might click. And you say, oh, okay, now I get it, now I get it. Like the first 3 problems you tried to solve, you're confused. The fourth one, he came at it from a different angle, and you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. I can solve all of them now. That ever happened to you in a class? Right? So the idea of the Qur'an is that this repetition is supposed to assist you in learning certain concepts. Now, how many believers have there been since Adam alayhi salam? Countless. And how many fathers have given advice to their sons? Countless. Throughout human history, throughout all societies. I mean, that's an infinite number of people that have talked to their sons. And this is a very private kind of conversation. Of course, Allah knows all of those conversations. And as a matter of fact, we're talking about this wise man, Luqman, and he's talking to his young son. Do you think this is the only conversation he had with his young son? No, I'm sure he had conversations throughout his life. And if you transcribe all of the conversations he had with his son, and transcribe every conversation every father has had with every son, that is an endless number of pages, isn't it? And so Allah decides, of all of those billions of pages of advice from a father to a son, this one brief set of advice is so valuable that it should become part of the last message to humanity. So from now until the Day of Judgment, people should review this advice and understand that this is of really serious value. So my take on the Qur'an is that when you find something in the Qur'an that's of historical nature, like Allah is talking about a conversation between a father and a son, that's actually, I take a step back and say, whoa, this is pretty amazing. Because this happens a lot. I give advice to my kids. My dad gave me advice. Ibrahim a.s. gave his children advice. And by the way, a lot of the people who gave their children advice, a lot of those people were prophets. So you would think every time Allah would quote someone in the Qur'an, He would quote who? He'd quote prophets. But He decided to quote Luqman because his advice was that epic. It was that comprehensive. It's a few words. It's from ayah number 12 to ayah number 19. And even in between of those 2 ayat, there's actually an interjection. An interjection means that Allah was quoting someone, and He stopped quoting them and started making some comments of His own, and then back to the quote. Let me say that again. Allah is quoting someone in between quotes, and in the middle of quoting someone, He stops quoting them, and then He starts adding some of His own commentary, and then goes, let's go back to the quote. He does that. This is kind of an interjection. That's going to happen in this discussion. Which is amazing because now it's as though Allah Azza wa Jalla is also so moved by this advice that halfway through He had to comment Himself. He commented Himself. And we'll notice that inshallah in the middle of this conversation. Inshallah ta'ala. Okay? So now the first thing. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ We had certainly given Luqman wisdom. We had certainly given Luqman wisdom. You know who Luqman is? Most people don't know. Luqman is actually a very famous person in Arab history. Even the people who didn't believe in Islam, they were before Islam, they believed that this man lived some time ago. He was from the Arab lands, and he was a very wise person. And they used to, you know how you have like proverbs and idioms and sayings, like wise sayings and things like that? They used to attribute a lot of wise sayings to Luqman. So people came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, well, you're a messenger. I mean, you receive a message from God. Well, you think like people like Luqman, they didn't have any wisdom? And Allah did something remarkable, right? He started answering the people's question with this passage saying, actually, yes, Luqman, I did give him wisdom. He wasn't just wise on his own. آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ We gave Luqman wisdom. In other words, Allah took someone that they looked up to already and didn't say, no, he wasn't a prophet, so forget about him. Don't listen to anything he has to say. No, actually, he had some good things to say too. So good, in fact, that I make them a part of the Qur'an. The lesson we learn from that is we don't dismiss people just because they're not Muslim. Or just because they're not the people we want people to listen to. He's before Islam. Obviously, he's a believer. He's a Muslim. Now we know. And the mushrikun didn't even know that he believed in one God and all of these things. We don't know. And actually, most people say that he lived at a time between prophets. In other words, he didn't have a prophet himself to follow and things like that. He just came to certain conclusions because Allah had given him wisdom. Subhanallah. So what that means is that there are people that have wisdom that aren't, that may not have been Muslim. And they may have something good to say. And we don't just dismiss what they say just because they're not Muslim. I was standing, I took my kids on a trip to Washington, D.C., and we were standing by the Lincoln Memorial. And think what you will of Lincoln. He's a contentious figure in American history. I know that. But you're standing in the Lincoln Memorial, and I'm not impressed with the giant statue thing that, starts speaking at the night of the museum or whatever. I'm talking about the speech that's engraved on the side. Right, the speech, some of his words are engraved on the side. You start standing there and reading those words, and I was literally moved to tears. It's an incredible speech. It is a remarkable work of art, not the engraving, the words themselves. I appreciate the wisdom in them. I think it's remarkable. I think, for example, one of my friends who's doing his PhD at the University of North Carolina, he's Muslim, of course. His PhD is on Einstein, on Einstein's writings, and not on Einstein's writings that have to do with science. When you guys think of Einstein, you think of E equals MC squared, or you think of a weird-looking guy that shows up in cartoons every once in a while or whatever. But Einstein, of course, one of the greatest, scientific minds of our time, right? The father of modern physics, even. Quantum mechanics and all of it. But before all of this, he actually wrote a lot about God. Einstein actually used to think a lot about God. And he wrote a number of papers. And the thesis that my friend wrote, he just finished and got approved too, was that his writings about God sound like an explanation of Suratul Ikhlas, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And it's actually been discovered that he had a number of copies of translations of the Quran in his library, and he's actually making a connection between his ideas of God and his influence from Islam. Something nobody talks about. And actually his professors, when you present your PhD paper, there are like a panel of professors whose job is to tear you apart, to rip you to shreds. That's what their job is. And they were all blown away by his thesis. Like, you would think he's going to talk about, crazy, the Quran inspired Einstein? You must be crazy. Actually, they were blown away and they're really impressed. And he's getting all kinds of accolades for his paper. It's nuts. But you know what? Whose wisdom is he impressed by? Not only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, whose words was he moved by to the point where he'd spend 6-7 years of his life doing a PhD? Einstein. In other words, wisdom can be found outside of, Muslim scholars or Muslim speakers or just the people who are Muslim themselves. Allah grants wisdom to whoever He wills. And they're in their own exploration. They're doing their own study. They're doing their own, and may Allah, Allah will judge them how He will. We can't say. And I'll repeat. Somebody asked a question: how are people going to be judged that aren't Muslim? This is actually the easy answer is every non-Muslim will go to hell. I personally, in all good conscience, I don't care how controversial this sounds to somebody else, I, in good conscience, after all the Quran I've tried to study and all the Seerah I've tried to study, cannot come to that conclusion. That is not my conclusion about people who are not Muslim. My conclusion is, I don't know. My conclusion is, Allah Azza wa Jalla has declared certain things that He does not accept. Inna dina inda Allahi al-Islam. The only religion acceptable with Allah is absolute submission. It's Islam. But at the end of the day, what a person died with, what they had in their heart, and the difference between what they had in their heart and what they had on their tongue, I will never know. I'm just never going to know. I'm actually much moved by the prime example of the king of Abyssinia. The king of Abyssinia who lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who accepted Islam quietly. Like his you could say minions, you get the wrong idea again, but the people in his kingdom and the people around him, his ministers, his generals or whatever, they didn't actually have an idea that he's become Muslim. And actually, if he declared that he's become Muslim, there would have been an uproar in the kingdom because the king's become blasphemous, because at the time, religion and politics were all meshed together. And actually, that's still the case. When you have modern elections, aren't there some people that say, oh, wait, he's running in the elections? Isn't he a Muslim? Or isn't he a Mormon? Isn't he Jewish? A Jew is going to be president of the United States? Is that conversation does it ever happen? So religion and politics are complicated, right? So he couldn't have just come out and said, I've become a Muslim. But Allah gave revelation to the Prophet ﷺ that he had actually died on Islam. And they prayed an absentee janazah for him. In other words, Allah by revelation told us about that king, that he's actually died on Islam. But if you look at the official record of the kingdom, what's it going to say? He died a Christian. Oh, that in and of itself is a lesson that unless, in the case of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah gave him revelation and let him know that this person actually died on Islam. But how many people are there who believe in one God, who are searching for the truth, who don't do any shirk, who die that way, and we have no idea. We just have no idea. And maybe the only reason they stayed away from Islam, the only reason, is Muslims. I'll say that again. Maybe some people, the only reason they weren't interested in Islam is because they met a Muslim. They're like, no, that can't be right. That can't be the right religion. And that's actually a dua in the Quran. لا تجعلنا فتنة للذين كفروا. Don't make us a fitna, a trial for those who disbelieve. Meaning, don't make us such a bad example that people look at us and they don't want nothing to do with us. And that's the reason they never accepted Islam. But that doesn't mean they don't come to Allah with a clean heart. We don't know. We just don't know. Just like we don't get to say, I'm going to heaven, you're going to Jannah. Alhamdulillah, thank God we have our tickets. We don't. We don't have our tickets. So if we can't even speak about ourselves, how is it that it's so easy for you and me to speak about someone else? It's not. So in any case, let's come back to Luqman. Allah had given him what? Wisdom. Now, when you think of wisdom, what kinds of ideas come in your head? Like, this person is wise. I know you're teenagers, you don't really think about wisdom too much, but if you do, what thoughts come in your head? Any ideas? Huh?
He has experience.
Someone with a lot of experience. Someone who says really deep things, like this, you say them and you want to tweet them and pretend like they're your own quote. Like people who say epic, profound things, they're wise, right? They speak almost in poetic language, or they speak in really big vocabulary. Like we think of someone wise as someone really knowledgeable, or someone really old who's experienced life, or someone who says just really super profound things, and you hear them and you're like, whoa, I don't even know what you said, but that was deep, man. Like that sort of thing, So we have this kind of fuzzy idea of what wisdom means. One of the interesting things about Arabic and Arab culture, ancient Arab culture, is that they loved simplifying things. They had a love of simplifying things. And they had this really simple, almost silly definition of wisdom. And I want to share that with you. Their definition of wisdom was, when you have correct knowledge, and you act on it, there are two parts to it, beneficial or correct knowledge, and the part two, that you act on it. When those two things come together, that actually means that you have wisdom. Now let's put that to the test a little bit. What do they mean by that? Here's correct knowledge. Fire burns. I hope you understand that that is correct knowledge. You acting on it means you did not stick your hand in the fire. Young man, you have acted wisely. You chose wisely, young samurai. You did not stick your hand in the fire. That is because you acted on the knowledge that you have. Okay, let's take it a step further. Smoking can lead to all kinds of lung problems, eventually even lung cancer. It's knowledge. As a result of that knowledge, what do you decide to do? Not smoke. That decision that you made is you acting wisely. Speeding on a highway recklessly can cause a crash. You can kill yourself, your friends, and other innocent people that have nothing to do with your ridiculousness. That's pretty good knowledge. Not you having a BMW M5 or having, another kind of, maybe a rice burner or whatever it is, and you not actually crossing the 100-mile-an-hour limit and not cutting through cars and thinking that you can pass by that truck even though it's about to take the exit and cut through. You not making that decision is a wise decision. Now, the simple question is it the case that a lot of times people actually have correct knowledge, but don't act on it? Does that ever happen? Sure. Wisdom is when you have the correct knowledge and you have the sense and the strength of judgment, the right kind of calibration up here, that you actually make the right judgment. You understand? That's wisdom. So wisdom is something practical. It's not something foo-foo and fuzzy and abstract. It's not an epic quote or whatever. It's practical. To the Arabs, it's practical. Okay? Now, having said that, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ, we had given Luqman wisdom, which means Luqman has two things. On the one hand, he's got knowledge, and on the other, whatever knowledge he has, he puts it to Action. It somehow changes the way he thinks, the way he decides something, the way he acts out on that knowledge. It is determined by what he knows. Okay. This is also important for you guys because really at the end of the day, for what is most demanded or what is most appreciated about youth in the Quran is actually wisdom. It's not knowledge. You guys know that when you're at this age, memorizing is easier, studying is easier, retaining is easier, taking tests is easier. As a matter of fact, if I was to go back to high school now, and I'd sit in the same physics class as you do, or the same math class as you do, I would not nearly do as well as you're doing. I wouldn't. You know why? Because I'm not in student mode anymore. My mind isn't as sharp as it was when I was a teen. There's a certain age where knowledge is easily acquired. But knowledge is easily acquired at an early age. What is acquired over time? Wisdom takes time. Right? So you know a lot, but you don't really know how to use it yet. Like you have kids that are like 10 years old, but they've memorized the whole Quran. Right? They memorize the whole Quran. But do they have the wisdom to understand what it means yet? And as a matter of fact, even if they memorize the entire translation, do they really internalize what it means yet? No, they don't have the capacity to do that yet. Wisdom hasn't settled in yet. So now Luqman has been given wisdom. And what is the climax of all of his wisdom? Check this out. Anishkur lillah. Be grateful to Allah. Be grateful to Allah. And here, because I'm a student of the Arabic language and in the Quran, there's a lot of things. The way I could put this easily to you guys is, you know how there's programming code, there's source code when you have a game or like an app. This is the front end, this is what you see, and there's a back end, there's a lot of code behind it. And sometimes there's some pretty epic things in the code that you don't see on the front end. There's a lot of that is in the Arabic language. When you study the Arabic language, there's something you see in translation. But there's something going on in the technical side of the Arabic that gives you a lot of benefits. Like a lot of meanings come out of it and you don't even know what happened. Right? So I don't want to get technical with you, but I do want to tell you that when Allah says, we gave him wisdom, He didn't say we gave him wisdom to be grateful to Allah. That's not how I translated it. He gave him wisdom to be grateful. Rather, He gave him wisdom, be grateful to Allah. Now there's a difference between saying He gave him the wisdom to be grateful and saying He gave him wisdom, quote, be grateful. Now when you say be grateful, what kind of language is that? That's a command, isn't it? That's a command. Meaning Luqman understood that being grateful is actually obligatory. It's not just something nice to do. It's not just something you should do every once in a while. You kind of sort of should do it. He realized that this is something he must do. That's captured inside Anishkur lillah. A lot of English translations, like some of the translations you guys have, can you read to me what they say in the translation? We gave Luqman wisdom. Can you read it out to me, out loud? Look, see, it says, saying, be grateful to Allah. That's still a decent translation. Because at least he kept what words? Be grateful. Be grateful. It's inside quotes. Okay. Now, this idea of him having to be grateful, what in the world does that mean? It's actually, there's a world of wisdom inside that reality. And I need you to understand it. There's two meanings of being grateful, or anishkur lillah. One of them is in the translation, be grateful to Allah. Here's the second meaning, be grateful for Allah's sake. I'll say that again. Be grateful to Allah. And the second one, be grateful for Allah's sake. Okay? Because of Allah. You can say be grateful because of Allah. Or for Allah's sake. Now what do these two things mean? Luqman understood at the end of all of the wisdom that Allah had given him that he has to be positive. At the end of the day, being grateful, you can think of it in simple language as being the same as being positive. You're in a bad situation. You're missing your flight. You wanted to go on vacation, you're missing your flight. You're sitting at the airport for 5 hours. Come on, another delay, another 2 hours. Oh God, now they're saying the flight's canceled. Forget, this is so ridiculous. Now you're all upset and agitated, and your mother comes to you and says, you know what, we should be grateful that at least we're together. Mom, yeah, thank God I'm together with all of you. I was looking forward to the fact that I was sitting in 27F and the rest of you were in 19D and 19E. But no, thank God that we missed a flight. Thank God that we've been sitting here on this uncomfortable chair. Thank God that the Dunkin' Donuts is closed. Thank God that, we had to go through security and I got the special treatment because my socks kept beeping or whatever. In other words, were you positive? No. At the end of his life, and at the end of all of the life experiences that he's had, he realized that being grateful is the ultimate wisdom. That's the ultimate wisdom. In other words, whatever experiences you and I have in life, the wise thing to do is to understand what is something I can be grateful about even in this crazy situation, even in this bad situation. Is there something I can be grateful for? Okay. I'll tell you a couple of quick stories here. One of my closest friends and a family member too, used to be Hindu, and he's really intelligent. He went to one of the highest, leading high schools in New York City. He had to actually take a couple of trains and travel an hour and a half to get to his high school in Stuyvesant, because he lived on Long Island and had to go into New York City, which is a hijrah basically. It's a migration every day. But he got into this elite school, and he had high scores, and he's got a full ride, and his parents really want him to be a doctor, and he's applied to med school, and he's got no doubt in his head that he's getting in, no doubt whatsoever. And guess what happens? Every school he applies to, he gets rejected, and he's in serious depression. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Everything I've done so far, I took AP Bio, AP Chemistry. I've been doing extra studies for med school for my entire life. I had my entire life planned out. My parents had my entire life planned out. All of their expectations of me are shattered. All of the expectations of myself are shattered. He falls back and goes into serious depression and decides, forget it. I'll at least do something else. He goes to another school in New York, Stony Brook University, and decides to do programming instead. And first couple of years you don't really do much in college. You take like political science and music 101, or you take all these like weird courses. But anyway, so he's taking these courses and he makes some friends that are Muslim. And they start hanging out with him. And they just start chilling. They didn't have a frat house, but you could call it that. Okay, they had a Muslim, the Muslim youth of MSA had a house to themselves, the guys that used to chill in on campus. And he's just hanging out with them all the time. And through that, actually, he became Muslim. And not only did he become Muslim, a lot of good came from him as a result of him becoming Muslim. A lot of service, alhamdulillah, to the ummah. But he looks back to those days and realizes, one of the things I'm most grateful for is not getting into med school. Would he have had that attitude at the time? But no, he has the wisdom now to understand that even that is something he should have been grateful for. Had he become a successful doctor, he would have stayed in shirk his entire life. But Allah brought him to the greatest gift of all, to Islam, because of not being able to get into med school. That's the path Allah chose for him. You understand? So there are sometimes, Allah will put you through certain experiences in life, and you're gonna have a hard time thinking, why in the world should I be grateful for this? But actually, that is the ultimate wisdom, being grateful. Being grateful for whatever happens. Whatever happens. This is particularly difficult for your generation. I'm not blaming you guys, but in your generation, there is an unusual amount of luxury and convenience. You guys have a lot of what you want at the tip of your fingers, literally. You can order things online, you can download things, you have the devices to do so, you have the constant connections to do so, and you've become used to that kind of convenience. You're accustomed to it. So for the 1 hour flight that you're taking, where your phone is on airplane mode, you're really agitated that you can't check your Facebook status. You're really annoyed that you can't make some phone calls. You're really upset that you didn't bring your charger and your iPad is already dead and you can no longer smash your bird into buildings. You're so used to having stuff at your fingertips all the time that, as a matter of fact, when I asked you guys to turn the phones off right now, some of you are probably pretty peeved about that. Seriously? And your hands are itchy right now because you're not getting to do whatever game it is that you're so addicted to. You're not getting to do it, And this is actually this is not just a problem of some games or some handheld devices or whatever. This is a much bigger problem. We're used to getting things, and we're starting to think that we're entitled to them, that we actually deserve them. And so the moment even a little bit of that is taken away from us, we lose it. We just absolutely lose it. So if you, for example, have to share your room with a sibling for a night because there's a flood in the other bathroom or they're changing the carpet or whatever, there's going to be, you're going to throw a fit. Are you serious? She's going to sit down, she's going to lie down in my bed? I have to share my, come on. Yeah, give her your clothes, okay? Her clothes are still in laundry. She can wear your clothes to school. Are you serious? Don't wear that one. Like, you have those conversations with your sibling? Don't wear that one. It's not, no, Mom said I could do it. In other words, you have stuff that's yours, it's yours, it's yours, it's yours, and you can't give it to anybody else. Nobody else can have my stuff. Why are you looking at my stuff? Why are you touching my stuff? Mine, 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 mine. You're like that bird in Finding Nemo. Mine, mine, mine. Like that's that, the wisdom that's being taught here. The wisdom that's being taught here. When are you grateful? You know when you're grateful? When you get something that you didn't deserve. Please remember that. You're grateful when you get something that you didn't deserve. This is really, really important. In order for you and I to be grateful, we have to internalize something. We have to remember something always and every day at every moment. That whatever you and I have, the clothes that we're wearing, the devices that we're so proud of, the cars that we're driving in, the homes that we have, the school that we go to, none of it is actually something we deserve. This is all actually given to us despite the fact that we do not deserve it. As a matter of fact, there is a young man or a young woman your age, if not just as intelligent, more intelligent than you, that's sitting out under a tree somewhere, homeless. That hasn't had real food to eat, not because they're fasting, because they have no real food to eat. And there's no logical explanation for why you deserve to live in a comfortable home and get to change the air conditioning in your house and have all kinds of luxuries that you don't appreciate, and they don't. There is no logical explanation. One explanation, though, is you certainly don't deserve, and I don't deserve, what we have. We do not deserve it. The problem, though, is when you constantly keep getting something, you know what you start, in the back of your head, you start thinking? You deserve it. You deserve it. And let me prove to you that we start thinking we deserve it. The moment you complain, you know what complaints are a proof of? Complaints are a proof that you thought you deserved something. Isn't that true? When you deserve something and you didn't get it, then obviously you're going to what? Complain. If you didn't deserve it, and you never got it, well, there's no reason to complain, because it wasn't yours, and you didn't deserve it either. No reason for you to complain. In other words, then all the things that you and I enjoy in life, we have to internalize the fact that they're not ours, that they do not belong to us, that they are gifts from Allah, and I can tell you very clearly that once you develop that attitude, you are going to lead a positive life. You're going to be very happy in life. And if you don't develop that attitude, you, my friend, are going to live a really miserable life. You're going to be unhappy your entire life. You're never going to be happy because you're constantly going to think you deserve better, you deserve better, you deserve better. Nothing's good enough for you. Nothing impresses you. And that's what I call the scariest disorder that has afflicted so many young people, the whatever disease, where nothing ever makes you happy. You get the best things in life and you look at them and you say, whatever. It's just the most poisonous word I've ever heard is whatever. I can't stand that word. I can't stand it. You know? Your parents are telling you, I've done so much for you. I do this for you. And that, but Mom, I really want to go on that trip. No, you can't go on that trip. You never let me do anything. What do you mean I never let you do anything? I do this for you and that. Yeah, whatever. You ever had those conversations? I'm sure you haven't, because you guys are angels over here. You guys have never had any conversation like that. We're reading the Quran, and I'm telling you, I just want to just tell you what the book says, and we just kind of talk about it in an abstract sort of way. This is talking about you and me. This is practical. Be grateful. Be grateful. Don't just be grateful. By the way, it does not say only be grateful to Allah. That's the other important thing. It says be grateful to Allah. And there's an important reason why the word only is not used. Some people say we can only be grateful to Allah. I'm not. Your parents are trying to tell you, look what I'm trying to help you. No. Or what do you want me to thank you? I should only thank Allah. Okay? Allah is the only one we should thank. The Quran never says that. As a matter of fact, the Quran tells us to be grateful to people, and to be grateful to teachers, especially to parents. Being grateful is not only for Allah. Being grateful is not only for Allah, not in the Quran. Anishkur li wali walidayk, it's actually coming a little bit later on. Be grateful to me and be grateful to both of your parents. You're supposed to be grateful to a teacher, grateful to a friend, grateful to a stranger who helped you on the side of a road, grateful to a classmate who helped you finish the homework assignment. You know? Grateful to someone who advised you, grateful to someone who helped you out in times of need. You're supposed to be grateful to people too. But you will never learn to be grateful if not for Allah. Now what does that mean? That means that you understand that every one of the people that you are grateful to, they're actually a gift of Allah to you. Your friends are a gift of Allah to you. Your parents are a gift of Allah to you. Your siblings, I know it's hard to believe, but they're also a gift of Allah to you. And you might think you're the first sibling that had a rivalry, or you don't get along with your sibling, and that's just unique to you. Actually, the Quran talks about the first murder in humanity that happened between siblings. Yeesh. So I'm not trying to say you're not that bad. Things haven't gotten that far yet, though I've thought about it multiple times. And may have said it. I'll kill you. And may have said it. But, rivalry is a real thing. It's a real thing. I'm not denying it. But this attitude is for the wise. To be grateful for all things. To be grateful for all the people in our life. This is anishkur lillah. And by the way, if you're grateful, usually when you're grateful, who does that help? Someone else. Meaning when you say thank you to someone, when you send a present to someone, when you send a card to someone, it is your gesture for someone else. But in this ayah, وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا وَمَنْ شَكَرَ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. Whoever is grateful is only actually truly grateful for his own benefit. Who is it benefiting? You. You're becoming a happier person. You're becoming a more satisfied person. You're making the most of what you have in your life. You're not constantly looking at what you didn't get or what you don't have or what you could have had. You're actually taking advantage of what you do have. The glass is never half empty for you. It's always half full for you. You're positive. Being grateful is the same as being positive. You're only helping yourself. There's modern psychology about this. There are TED Talks that are done about this. That if you become grateful, you'll lead a happier life. They're discovering this now, and it's so epic that there's a TED Talk about it, and people are like, yay, that's amazing. I never thought about it like that. And yet, Allah has given us that 1400 years ago. Listen, if you're grateful, it's only going to help you. There's no TED Talk about this ayah. There's no appreciation and accolade about this ayah, but this powerful reality is there. It's just there. And we have to internalize, this is one of the first and foremost things about believing in Allah, by the way. Believing in Allah is not just, I believe there's a God. And this is what I'm going to end with, so you guys think about this, okay? When we say we believe in Allah, it's not just about we believe in an invisible power that does everything, that created the universe, that created us, that is controlling all things. That's not enough. Believing in Allah actually leads to certain kinds of attitudes. Believing in Allah leads to what? Attitudes. And the first attitude that the Quran talks about, that believing in Allah leads to, is gratefulness. You become positive. You become someone who's appreciative. You don't become apathetic. Do you know what apathetic means? You don't care. You're not a person who doesn't care. You never say, I don't care. Whatever. You're not that kind of person. You're always appreciating things around you. You always see value in things around you. You always see value in people around you. You don't make fun or ridicule or undermine other people. Your friends at school might make fun of other people. You don't, because you appreciate all people. You appreciate the good in them. You see how when people make fun of others, what do they make fun of? They're so fat, they're so skinny, they're so short, they're so weird, they have an accent, look at their teeth, look at their nose, look at this, look at how they're dressed. Isn't that what they make fun of? Look at the clothes they're wearing. Look at the book bag they have. Look at the brand of shoes they're wearing. Where'd you get those? Walmart? And all of these things is as though this person should feel, well, I'm so short. I should complain about that. I'm so skinny. I should be sad about that. I have shoes from Walmart. I should be depressed about that. In other words, we're instilling into people how they should be grateful or ungrateful? Ungrateful. Ungrateful. Everyone, we're supposed to not just be grateful ourselves, we should instill gratitude in other people. And by the way, the opposite of gratitude is what word? Gratitude versus? No. Ingratitude. It's very difficult, I know. Gratitude versus what? You know what the Arabic word for ingratitude is? Now this is the crazy part. The Arabic word for ingratitude is kufr. The Arabic word for ingratitude is what? Kufr. Does anyone know what the other meaning of kufr is? Disbelief. So to the Arabs, disbelief and ingratitude are one and the same. There's not even a difference to them. Someone who's not grateful might as well not even be a believer. The first thing that happens as a result of you being a believer is you become grateful, you become positive. This is why the first words of the Quran are what? Fatiha, how does it begin? Alhamdulillah. Words of gratitude. Praise and gratitude belongs to Allah. It's the first lesson you learn in the Quran. First lesson. You don't learn that one lesson, you don't learn anything. You don't know anything. So you and I have to internalize this. There are people who are very knowledgeable in Islam and they don't even know this. And even if they know it, they don't practice it. And so they have knowledge, but they don't have what? Wisdom. And this is something we need to remind ourselves of. Even if we have a lot of knowledge, there are still people that are super knowledgeable, but they're always complaining anyway. How can you be knowledgeable about Islam and be complaining? Those two things can't come together. They don't work together. The more knowledgeable we get in this deen, we're supposed to get wiser. And the wiser we get, what are we supposed to do more of? Gratefulness. That's what's supposed to happen. So with that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll conclude our first conversation about these ayat. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. Once again, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're still on ayah number 12. That's the conclusion of ayah number 12 in Surah Luqman. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. And whoever was ungrateful, whoever were to be ungrateful, I'm not translating here as whoever disbelieved. Remember, kufr means two things, ingratitude and disbelief, but it's being contrasted here with shukr. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرْ. In other words, it's a contrast to gratitude. And if it comes as the opposite of gratitude, it makes sense to call it ingratitude. Okay? So whoever was ungrateful, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ, then certainly Allah is free of need, and He's praised in and of Himself. Now that's a very powerful statement by Allah. Let's try to understand what He's saying here. Allah is saying that He does not need you to be grateful to Him. And He does not need you for anything. People ask the silly question, why does Allah want me to thank Him anyway? Why does He always need my thanks? Actually, He needs nothing from you. He's ghani. Ghani means someone who's independent, who has no need. Who has no need of you. In fact, the only one who has a need is who? It's you. You don't thank Him for every breath, but He still provides it. You don't thank Him for every heartbeat, but He still allows it. You don't thank Him for every vessel inside your body that's being filled with blood, and the blood is flowing, but He's still doing it for you. It's not happening automatically. This body's not functioning automatically. The fact that you and I are able to blink and able to see, the fact that you and I are not overwhelmed with pain in every ounce of our skin, all of that's from Allah. But we're not necessarily grateful for Him, and we don't express that gratitude to Him, but He still provides these things for us. In fact, if there's anyone who doesn't need, it's Him, not us. And if you say, why does He need me to thank Him? Why can't I just be? Well, you in fact, and I, no matter how much we thank Him, in the grand scheme of things, we actually still haven't thanked Him. So you don't think to yourself or myself for 1 second that we've actually done the job of thanking Allah. It's not ever going to be the case. We're never going to actually truly be able to thank Allah for what He's done. In fact, Allah says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you were to try to fully understand and fully appreciate even a single favor of Allah, you wouldn't be able to figure it out. You wouldn't be able to fully appreciate it, fully grasp it. It's not possible for you. We can't even truly thank Allah for one favor. What to think of, وَأَسْبَغَ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعَمَهُ ظَاهِرَةً وَبَاطِنَةً. Allah has unleashed His favors onto you, the ones that are obvious and the ones you don't even see. There are so many unseen ways in which Allah is helping you and me that we don't even realize. There are ways in which Allah is protecting us in our sleep. There are ways in which there are, as you're walking down the street, there are insects that one bite of which could kill you. They're carrying deadly viruses and diseases, and they buzz right by you by Allah's command. And they bite someone else, and they die. And you don't. And that was not under your control. And there was nothing you could have done about it. We don't even know the ways in which Allah is protecting us. We don't even know. Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran says, جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ حَفَظَةً. He put guardian angels on you. He literally put angels who are on full-time duty just to watch over you, just to take care of you. You're driving your car and the brakes are being kept from failing because there's an angel holding them up. Like, that's what's happening. There's another guy that's a drunk driver next to you. You're driving perfectly fine within the speed limit in your lane. Everything's good. You know, it's one of those simple, easy drives. This guy's about to smash into you. But the angels are pushing his car back. No, not yet. You smash after he passes. We're supposed to keep this one safe. We don't even know the ways in which Allah is protecting us, the ways in which Allah is doing us favors, the way in which He's providing for us. We don't know. You know? People think, oh, I have a secure job. You have a secure job where? The company that you work for, how does it make its money? Who's providing them? You know? Who's taking care of them? Where your paycheck comes from. Aren't there entire people work for hospitals or work for schools? Isn't it the case that sometimes entire hospitals shut down? Entire schools shut down? Entire cities go bankrupt? Entire cities? You think you have a stable job? No, that's actually from Allah. So Allah says He doesn't need you. In fact, you need Him. He's ghani. Then He adds the word Hamid. Hamid is someone who is praised and is shown appreciation on his own. In other words, you don't need to show Him praise and appreciation. That is actually true of Him if no creation existed. Imagine if Allah created nothing. There was no universe, there were no human beings, there were no animals, nothing. Allah would still be praised and Allah would still be appreciated. He doesn't need creation to show Him gratitude. As a matter of fact, if we are praised, we're actually called Mahmud. The word for that is Mahmud in Arabic, when somebody is praised. And when you say Mahmud, that actually means that someone praised you or someone thanked you. That's Mahmud. Hamid is someone who is praised and appreciated even if no one else is around. Allah says Hamid, which basically means not only doesn't He need you, He doesn't need anybody to praise Him. His hamd is always going to be there. So you thanking Allah or you not thanking Allah won't take anything away from Allah. It'll only cause you damage. The only one who will get hurt is you. From now Allah goes forward, and this gratitude that Luqman had, what does he do? إِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ, when Luqman said to his son. Now he's about to speak to his son. Obviously he's going to give his son advice, and Allah's quoting that advice. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but let's see if you can think through this. Is there anything in Surah Al-Asr that is related to Luqman giving his son advice? Anything at all? I'll wait. I'd like to hear the Arabic. Anything at all that is in Surah Al-Asr that might be correlated with Luqman giving his son advice. I heard it. I heard a whisper. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. Very good. You have to give advice and counsel truthfully. Remember? So he's about to do this with his son. Now we're learning a practical example of tawasi bil haqq. The other thing here is the first part, to be grateful to Allah. What is that? If you put a chapter on top, and this is one of the headings under that chapter, from Surah Al-Asr, what is being grateful to Allah part of? Any idea? Whoever is grateful is only grateful for himself, and whoever disbelieved or whoever was ungrateful. Isn't that about faith? Like one of the first results of faith is that you are grateful, and it's also kind of under good deeds, because being grateful is one of the best good deeds that you can do. Right? So in a sense, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ is already there, and now we're getting into tawasi bil haqq. By the way, if you go a little bit further down, if you look at ayah number 17 for a second, just look at ayah number 17. Ya bunayya aqimis salata wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha 'anil munkar. And what does it say in Arabic? Ya bunayya aqimis salat wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha 'anil munkar. Then wasbir. What is that? Patience. Oh, look at that. All four. All four. Over again. I couldn't help myself. Anyway. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ, when Luqman said to his son, وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ, while he was trying to counsel him. This وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ is interesting. There are two things you learn from that. You don't just talk to your son about, or don't give advice just at any time. There's an opportunity to give some counsel and to share words that will be felt in the heart. And you take advantage of those particular times. That's the first lesson of وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. It's a haliyah. I won't get technical with you, just the overall lesson. The overall lesson is you find the right time to talk to people. You don't just talk to them whenever you see their face. Hey, oh, you just walked in? Let me tell you like 5 hadith right now and 3 ayat. And let me give you a whole lecture. No. There's a time and a place. There's an opportunity. There's an opportunity. You're going on a road trip. You've been meaning to talk to your son. And, everybody, there's been 3 hours on the road. Everybody else has passed out. He's in front with you. You share a couple of bananas and chocolate milk or whatever. And then you start talking a little bit. Because everybody else is sleeping right now. It's a good time. It's a little bit of good, and you got nowhere to go. And you ran out of things to say. So, you ever think about this ayah? I've been thinking about this ayah. What do you think? You find an opportunity. You don't just bring it up whenever, because you don't want to hear from your son or from anybody else you're trying to give advice to. Now's not a good time. Now's not a good time. Excuse me, I'm busy right now. Then I'm in the middle of something right now. The guy's on the phone, you're trying to give him a lecture. You can't do that. You have to find the right time. You have to have this. That's part of wisdom, isn't it? Wisdom isn't just that you give somebody advice, you give advice at the right time. That's the first lesson. The second lesson is the fact that the word huwa is mentioned here. وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. What that actually, the lesson that comes out of that is, in fact, the father decided that he will be the source of advice, and before anybody else could give advice. In other words, the father realized that my son is going to be influenced by other sources. There are going to be friends that might impact him, teachers that might impact him, people on the street might impact him, something he watches on TV might impact him, in our case, something he sees online might impact him. Before anything else impacts him, I should try to impact him. I should preempt all of that. I should be the first source of advice and counsel. And then there's the word wa'adh. وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ, as opposed to وَهُوَ يَزْجِرُهُ, while he was scolding him, while he was laying it in on him, while he was slamming down the hammer. No. Father spoke to son while he was giving him loving advice. Wa'adh in Arabic is when you give loving advice. First of all, I'm going to be the source of loving advice, nobody else. And I'm going to make him feel like he can talk to me and he doesn't have to hide things from me, and we can be open with each other. That's the kind of relationship that is being described, and that's wisdom. That's wisdom in the ayah. So wa'adh. The idea of wa'adh means, by the way, wa'adh in Arabic is when you give someone advice and they actually feel it. Like when you give someone advice and they do the epic whatever. Yeah, okay. Really you should take your time making wudu. Okay. All right, I got it. That's not wa'adh because it didn't hit you. But sometimes somebody gives you advice and you just almost move to tears. I know. Sorry. When that happens, that actually means you're experiencing a wa'adh. Okay? So now, in this ayah, Luqman is finding a time, out of wisdom, for his son to hear something that will actually impact him emotionally. Wa'adh actually means you're trying to reach the emotions of someone. Okay? And you can't reach the emotions of someone by yelling at them, because they'll just block you out. They won't even hear what you're saying. They'll just know that you're yelling. Now, what does he say to him? He says, Ya bunayya. See, every word is important. Allah decided to give us this conversation, so every word must be of real value. So he says, Ya bunayya, my beloved little son. Mere chote se munne. I don't know how your dad calls you out of love, but that's what it is. And it's not just about father and son now, even though it's primarily about father and son. When you are going to address someone and they are a family relation, then express your love for them. Don't just assume they know that you love them or that they love you. You have to express it. Ya bunayya is almost like saying, I love you, son. It's almost like that. By the way, bunay is called ism tasghir in Arabic, which actually means little. My little son. Even though he's an older kid, he's a young man. He's a young man. But he's still saying, you're my young son. My little boy, come here. And even if, and our dads, they normally don't get softy like that. They're pretty tough. But if every once in a while, even though you've already grown your facial hair, you're in college now, you're driving now, and your dad comes to you, my young son, come here. Just for those few seconds, even if he's been yelling at you all this time, you melt. Give me a hug, son. Just the word son can actually have an effect on a son. Just hearing that does something. It does something. I know for a fact, every time I give my dad a hug, or no, the other way around, when he gives me a hug, oh, forget it. That's a relationship you're supposed to have. You're supposed to cultivate. So similarly, in all the other relationships, what is it that will make someone feel loved is important. So before you even get to the advice, make someone feel loved. Make someone feel appreciated. That's wisdom. That's why he began with Ya Bunayya. Every word here is wisdom. Then he says, La tushrik billah. Don't do wrong by Allah. Don't do wrong by Allah. Don't associate anyone with Allah. And I know you've heard these words before. Don't do shirk, don't associate with Allah. But now, because we've reached that first advice that Luqman is going to give his son, not to do shirk with Allah, it's interesting, right? He didn't give him advice about how he needs to be good to himself, how he needs to be good to his mother, how he needs to be good to someone else. He started with, you need to be good to who? Allah. And he didn't even say you need to be good to Allah. He said, don't be bad to Allah. Don't do shirk with Allah. Don't associate a partner with Allah. So we're going to explore a little bit, what does it mean to associate a partner with Allah? And I'll try to use Hafiz ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah's distinction and his discussion. I'll simplify that for you, and hopefully you'll remember it for the rest of your lives, inshallah. It's very important that you do. What is our relationship with Allah? Allah is our master and we are His slave. We are His slaves. We are abd. He is Rabb, master. We are abd. We are slaves. Now, me as slave, that means 5 things. So try and remember these 5 things. Me as a slave of Allah means practically 5 things. And so I'm going to walk you through those 5 things. Then we'll understand what shirk means. Okay, but first, let's understand what it means to be a slave. The first thing that being a slave means is specifically with Allah, it would mean that I can only worship Him. I can only pray to Him. I can only do sajda to Him. There are certain praises and there are certain glorifications that I can only do for Allah, I can't do for anybody else. When someone other than Allah is being elevated, the way only Allah should be elevated, I will not be able to tolerate it. When someone else is being praised, the way Allah should be praised, I won't be able to handle it. Even though I already told you, you can praise someone other than Allah, but there are certain kinds of praises that are only for Allah. They're only and only for Allah. Like Allah says, for example, I'll give you an example of that. وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. Masajid belong to Allah. Masjids, they belong to Allah. Don't call anybody else besides Allah in them. So a masjid is a place where if you're going to do praise, whose praise should it be? It should be Allah's praise. It should be Allah's praise. So if you go to the masjid and people are, praising the governor or praising a king or praising this or praise this, it doesn't sit right. This is not the place. You could praise him at an award ceremony, I don't care. But once you're inside the masjid, praise who? Praise Allah. So that's kind of part of worship, right? We're going to only really pray to Allah Azza wa Jal, not anybody else. Part of that is also, how people sometimes think that, and unfortunately some Muslims hold this view too, that we're going to go to some shrine and some, saint's grave, and we're going to go, sacrifice an animal there, or we're going to go give some charity there, and we're going to go pray there, and somehow when we pray there, then our prayers are going to count for more. That's called ansab in the Quran, and it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Nobody's going to come between us and Allah. Nobody will come between us and Allah. Even the Prophet ﷺ is not in between us and Allah. Actually, his job is to connect us to Allah directly. The difference between us and Christians, primarily, they pray to God too, but they say they pray to God through Jesus. We pray to God through no one. Through no one. We just pray directly to Him. That's the first thing. Worship. Direct worship of Allah. No one in between. The second is obedience. This is an important one to understand. Obedience. Can you think of who we obey other than Allah? Parents. Who else? Think. Teachers, sure. In a classroom, you obey teachers. Who else? A boss. At work, you obey a boss. What else? You obey state laws when you're driving, hopefully. You obey elders. When they ask you to do something, you obey them. Allegedly. Sometimes you obey siblings if they're powerful. If they're stronger than you, taller than you. Then it probably makes sense to obey them. Anything else you obey? Anyone else you obey? Sure, you can obey an imam. You can obey a police officer. Pull over. You pull over. Give me your license. سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey. You know. So we obey people in life, don't we? We obey laws. We obey parents. We obey elders. We obey teachers. We obey bosses. There's lots of obedience in life. But to be a slave of Allah, we say we obey Allah. The question though is, well, we're obeying so many others and we're obeying Allah too. Is that shirk? Because shirk means that you have partners. What you do to Allah, you do to someone else too. So my problem becomes, well, we obey Allah and we obey other people, so isn't that a kind of shirk? Well, no, it's not a kind of shirk unless you break one rule. And that one rule is, if obeying someone else means that you're going to disobey Allah, then it's shirk. I'll say that again. If you have to obey someone else, and obeying someone else will mean that you will be disobeying who? Allah, that will actually become shirk. Just give you an example of that. You're supposed to pray. Whose command is that? Allah. Your dad says, don't pray. I need you to do this, don't pray. Pray later. Dad, it's almost, the time's finished for Salah almost. It's like 5 minutes left before Salah time is finished. I don't care. Pray in an hour. Don't pray right now. Oh. Now you've got obedience to parent or obedience to Allah. Guess what you got to do? No matter how much trouble you get in, you have to obey Allah. You have to obey Allah. Now, let me give you another scenario so I know you're thinking clearly. You're about to bite into some good halal chicken. Your dad says, come here, finish this work. But dad, the chicken's halal. Who do you obey in that case? Your dad. I don't care if the chicken's halal. You're not commanded by Allah to eat the halal chicken. In that case, you obey your dad. So the only time you get to disobey your dad is when it means, obeying him will mean disobeying Allah. Clearly disobeying Allah too. Clearly disobeying Allah. Not just in your head, it might mean disobedience to Allah. If it's clear, then yes. Similarly, the obedience to a king, the obedience to a government, the obedience to a teacher, the obedience to a friend, all of it is fine, unless it means disobedience to Allah. That would become shirk. You understand that? So that's what we mean by obedience to Allah. Okay? Now the third. So the first one was what? Worship. The second one was obedience. The third one is trust. The third element of us being slaves of Allah is trust. Now, do I trust my parents? Yes. Do I trust my teachers? Sure, in many cases. Most of my teachers, anyway. Do I trust my employer? In many cases. Do I trust my friends? Sure. Do I trust my wife? Absolutely. Do I trust my children? You know. Now, we're saying you have to trust Allah. You have to trust Allah. How is it true that we can only trust Allah? In some things, yes. And when it comes to the unseen, and when it comes to really defining what is best for you, when it comes to the future, when it comes to defining what is best for you, when it comes to defining what is right and what is wrong, what is priority and what is not priority, then you have to trust whose decision? Allah's decision is the best decision. You have to trust Him. You also have to trust Him in whatever you're going through is better for you. You also have to trust Him that no matter what, you should still be grateful. Trust me, you should be grateful. That takes a lot of trust. That kind of trust may not be possible with other people. It may be the case that your teacher kicks you out of class and says, this is good for you, and you're not able to trust that. It may be your boss fires you and says, by the way, this is a good life experience for you. You may have a hard time trusting your boss with that. Okay? And for everybody else, by the way, this is also true. For everyone else, trust is earned. Everybody else, you don't just trust isn't free. I don't just trust anybody. I trust my mom with my life because my life was in her hands. She literally had my life in her hands. She could have dropped me. She could have. I could not have survived if it wasn't for my mom. So I absolutely trust my mom. I trust my dad. He's raised me. He's provided a roof over my head. He's fed me. He's educated me. I have to trust him. Trust with a wife or a husband doesn't come naturally. You don't know this person. All of a sudden you're married to them and they're half your life. It takes time to build trust. It doesn't just happen. It takes a while. And it's supposed to be earned. If the husband says, I'll be back at 8, and he comes back at 11, I'll be back at 8, and he comes back at 11. Next time he says, I'll be back at 8, does the wife trust him? Yeah, 8. Pakistan time, right? She doesn't trust him. Trust is earned. Trust with friends, is that natural or is it earned? It's earned. There are some relationships where trust is earned. You can't just have it. It's earned over time. Okay? Business partners can build trust over time. Maybe in the beginning they have to have very strict contracts to protect each other and lawyer up. Over time they become friends and they realize they can trust each other. They can even leave the other. You have friends that are so close to you, you can leave your house keys with them. You can trust them with anything. You can trust them with anything. The thing is, we don't need to have sort of a back and forth with Allah before we can build our trust in Him. It is supposed to already be there, because if you think your life was in the hands of your mother, then you didn't realize your mother's life and yours has always been in the hands of Allah, and we've actually left our entire life to Him anyway. The heartbeats in my chest are actually left to Him. I forget to recharge. I forget to wind it up. Allah is the one keeping track of the heartbeat. So our bodies are actually entrusted to Him already. We don't have to earn, He doesn't have to earn our trust. He should be trusted. He should be trusted. He should be considered reliable. We have to have this reliance on Allah, this tawakkul in Allah. It's called tawakkul, reliance. Okay? So Allah is reliable above all else. And by the way, every other creation of Allah, every other person in your life will disappoint you possibly. Even though you trust them. It's possible that they will not be able to come through for you. The one you can always rely on, no matter what, is Allah. That's always going to be there. Okay? So that's trust. How many do we have so far? We have 3. We have what? What was the first one? Worship. The second one? Obedience. And the third? Trust. Okay. Now we come to love. The 4th dimension is love. We have to love Allah. And the love for Allah needs to be intense. Allah talks about each of these in the Quran, by the way. Each of the ones I'm mentioning to you, they're all talked about. Like Allah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. There are people that take other competitors besides Allah, loving them like they should love Allah. This is a hard one to talk about. Please listen to this carefully. Not Sayyid, someone else, was giving a lecture not too long ago, and he said something so controversial. He said something so out of this world that when I heard it, I was like, really? You could say that? And then I thought about it for a few days, and I actually ended up agreeing with him. So the person said that, people pray to Allah when it's time for salah. But most of the other time, they're praying to their phones and their mobile devices and their toys and their gadgets. That's what they're praying to. I said, how can you say that? That's such a horrible thing to say. Then when I thought about it and I read some of this Ibn Taymiyyah writing about worship or our relationship with Allah, one of its dimensions is love. If we show Allah love, when do we show it? Time of prayer. Most of the time, love is, by the way, love is directly associated with what is on your mind. What takes most of the time in your head? What do you think about most of the time? What do you want to do most of the time? Who do you want to be with most of the time? What do you want to spend most of your time doing, or who do you want to spend most of your time with? That is what love's about. If you love someone, you want to be with them. If you love something, you want to have it. You want to use it. You want to be with it. That's what love is. Practically speaking, that's what love is. The question is, though, what do we spend most of our time doing? Fiddling with our gadgets? Playing games? Listening to music? Watching movies? Isn't that what's taking up most of our love? Most of our time? Or there's some boy who's obsessed with some girl, he's thinking about her all the time. His guy, she didn't realize he took a picture of her, he just keeps looking at her photo. Young little pervert, he's just staring at her picture all the time. He's just obsessively in love, That's all he thinks about. Even when he thinks about it, even when he's praying, he thinks about that. He made wudu. He's doing sajda. He's doing sajda in the direction of the Kaaba. Allegedly, he's doing sajda to Allah. But his heart is doing sajda in a different direction. You understand this problem? The heart is somewhere else. And that's a kind of shirk you can do even when you're at the Kaaba. You could be standing in front of the Kaaba, doing sajda to Allah, and still be doing shirk. That's the shirk of love. It's a scary shirk. قل إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله فتربصوا حتى يأتي الله بأمره والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. Tell the people, if your parents and your children and your families and your extended families and the money that you've worked so hard to gather, your wealth, the businesses that you keep worrying about that they'll go down, the homes that you love decorating, if all of that put together, you love all that stuff more than Allah and His Messenger and struggling for Allah and His Messenger and His path, then you just wait until Allah comes with His decision, because Allah does not guide corrupt people. Wallahu la yahdi al-qawm al-fasiqeen. Allah literally says, if all those things in your life are more beloved to you, you love that stuff way more than you actually love Allah, you've got yourself a big problem. So this love thing is really difficult. It's really difficult. We have to figure this one out. Because if we don't, then we're falling under shirk. Remember, Luqman's advice to his son is what? Don't do shirk. So it could be shirk of obedience, it could be shirk of worship, it could be shirk of trust, and it could be shirk of love. So what is the shirk of love? The shirk of love is committed when my love of my parents or my children or my spouse or any of it is not based on the love I have for Allah. I'll say that again. You can love your friends. You can love the wife. You can love the husband. You can love the children. You can love the parents. But that love is supposed to have a basis. And what's the basis of it? The love of Allah. Now, what does that mean practically? How do you understand that? You understand that very simply. If out of love of them, if out of love of my wife, I do things Allah doesn't like, out of love for her, I do things Allah hates. Out of love for him, you do things Allah hates. Then that is shirk in love. That love is making you turn away from Allah and what He loves. If that love of a love of your stuff, it's okay in Islam to love money. It's not haram. Allah actually mentions that you love money. It's natural. So you know why people love money? Not just because it buys you stuff, but because you have to give up a part of your life to earn it. You have to slave away at an office or on a farm or in a truck driving around. You have to do work to earn money. You have to give up a part of your life, so that money that you have in your hands is actually a part of your life that you gave up. It's hard to let go of it. So you have to have a love of it. It's natural. But when that love of money takes you away from what Allah loves, then you've got yourself shirk. Allah is not denying you love. Allah is not saying you can't have love for anything else. But Allah is saying, if that love takes you away from me, then that's unacceptable. Then you can't have that. There are people who love their house. I still remember this one story of a lady I met in Las Vegas. I was invited to a house where they asked me to speak to the youth because I really connect with them. I do not. And these kids are like, they don't want to be there. They do not want to be there. These kids are sitting there, man. They're like, give me a lecture. Before I even begin, they're just staring outside, giggling to each other, whatever. But whatever, I talked to them for a few minutes. Then the mother came up to me, and they had a really nice house. They had a 15-bedroom house. Yeah, seriously. Their living room was maybe 3 floors high. And it was all glass, and it overlooked their swimming pool, which was simulating a waterfall. They made their swimming pool look like an actual sliding waterfall, rocks and everything, in Las Vegas, of all places. But anyway, their dining table can seat 20 people. It was one of those, those Knights of the Shining Armor dining tables, like King Arthur dining tables? It was one of them dining tables. It's a mirror, too. So you sit there like, yes, I shall sit here with a golden spoon, whatever. But so we're sitting there, and this the lady of the house, the wife, she came up to me and said, I have to talk to you. I was like, yeah, please, go ahead. Oh, I can tell you one more thing about that house. So they have this winding staircase, right? Which is not a big deal. We have winding staircases. That's cool. It's pretty awesome. Except, when I looked at the winding staircase, I was like, who drops silk on the staircase? You take a piece of really exotic silk and you throw it, and it kind of falls like that. That's the shape of the marble that they made the staircase on. So it literally looks like silk fallen on the staircase. And I was like, dang. This place is epic. I was walking in with one of my friends. I still remember. I was walking into the mansion with one of my friends. I walk in and I was like, first thing I said, this looks like a Colombian cartel movie, yo. I'm just waiting for someone to come out with a machine gun from one side, like, say hello to my little friend. Then the second thing I said to him was, what motivation for Jannah do you have left? I mean, Allah says He'll give you waterfalls. Wait, check right there. He'll give you massive mansions right here. He'll give you lofty, what do you have left? Everything's here. Everything's here. So the lady comes to me and says, mashallah, we have this house, and I really love this house. And I have a problem. I don't want to leave this house. I love this house so much. I think about it all the time. I've spent so much time decorating it. I take care of it. There are 3 people that work full-time just to clean and maintain the house. And I never want to leave this place. I love it so much. And I told her, lady, you can love it all you want. You're leaving this house. And you better accept that sooner rather than later. I'm only saying this because I care about you and your family. Whether you like it or not, someone else will be living in this house one day. And you won't be. You won't be anywhere near it. You won't be anywhere near it. And as much as you love this house, if you keep this up, you're going to hate it one day. You're going to look back and say, why did I love that house? You better fix yourself now. You've got your love placed in the wrong place. Is it okay to love a house? Sure. I actually love my house. I love my house. But is it a problem when you love your house so much that you stop even thinking that there's another house that Allah built? That house, I'm so happy here, I don't want to leave this one. Isn't that a problem? That's shirk in love. That's shirk in love. We have to watch out for that one. Because I cannot test that one for you, and you cannot check that one for me, because that is deep down inside. So you have to ask yourself where you stand. You really have to ask yourself where you stand. Here's a good litmus test I'll give you for yourself. And you can do this mental exercise. If you can do this mental exercise, then you are, and you can do a practical exercise too, then you can tell if you have this problem or not. So think of what you love the absolute most. Like maybe it's a toy, maybe it's a device, maybe it's the house, maybe it's a car, maybe it's a person. The thing or the person, the object of your love in this world that more than anything else you have or you want or you feel like you can't do without. And then you deprive, in your imagination, you deprive yourself of it. It's no longer there. That person is no longer there. The money or the house or the device, the toy, whatever, is no longer there. And you're still totally fine. You're completely okay. It's not a problem because you still have Allah. Then you're fine. But if that thing that you love is taken away and you've lost it, you don't know what to do with yourself. You don't want to live anymore. You're in serious depression. Then you've got a shirk problem. You've got a serious problem. This love of Allah above all else, it will save your life. There are people who love their career. You know that? They love their career. There are people who love their appearance. They work out 10, 12 hours a day. They love looking at themselves in the mirror. They post shirtless pictures of themselves. They love their appearance. Absolutely. And if those same people get sick, if those same people get hospitalized, and they lose their physique, or the people who love their money and love their job lose their job, and they no longer have the status that they used to enjoy, they no longer have the car they used to have, the house they used to have, the furniture they used to have, if they no longer have those things, you know what a lot of those people do when they lose it? They commit suicide. They can't take it anymore. They cannot take it anymore. There are some people who love their freedom. They absolutely love their freedom. I forgot the name of the young man. He was an activist who was big on the information, freedom of information and all this sort of stuff. So he took a bunch of university PhD papers, private PhD papers, and he put them up on Wikipedia. And he was a young guy. He's 22 years old, and he got sentenced 50 years in prison. Right? And the court battles were going on, but it looked like he was losing. And about three weeks before his sentencing date, he committed suicide. Because what was there? A love of freedom. And the thought of being imprisoned was too much. I can't handle it. I don't know what I'll do without my freedom. I would rather die. That's a love of freedom. In other words, our love of things, our love of all things actually makes us weak. And the only one love that you can survive no matter what happens in this life, and you'll still survive, you'll still be fine, is the love of Allah. Because everything in this world, kullu man alayha fan, everyone on this earth, and everything on this earth is meant to die, is meant to go away, is not going to last forever, but Allah will. A lot of you are kids, but you need to understand, your parents are not going to be around forever, neither are you. We don't know which one Allah will take first. We don't know. But maybe all of us together, maybe one first and then the other. We're grateful that our parents are alive and our children are alive. We're grateful for that. But life is not in my hands and life is not in your hands. And my kids are sitting in the audience, I'm telling them that too. As a matter of fact, I'm psycho enough, I told that when I talked to my wife for the first time after our marriage. She sat in the limo, I turned to her and I talked to her about death. I was like, look, I'm not going to be around forever, neither are you, so we should be good to each other. And then the second thing I told her is just, in case there's any confusion, it was your fault. Just remember that as a rule and we'll be fine. This will work out if you remember this one thing. When in doubt, it's your fault. Okay. Now we're married. Okay, so, But the idea of, everything we have around us and everyone we have around us is temporary. So love it, but love it to an extent. Love it to an extent. The love we have for Allah is beyond extent. The love we have for the house He's built for us in the afterlife, in His company, is beyond limit. If you can internalize that, then life will become easy for you. And when you do internalize that, I can tell you from personal experience, if you internalize that even a little bit, Allah will open the doors of this world for you. You're not obsessed with this world, but Allah will give, and He'll give you, and He'll give you, and He'll give you. He'll give you because He knows that you want something far bigger. So these things are nothing. These things are nothing. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. He'll start providing people from where they couldn't even imagine. Money will be no problem. Business will be no problem. School will be no problem. All your problems will disappear if you just truly learn to love and trust Allah. So love is a big one. Finally. So there are 4 so far. Can you walk me through them again? Worship, Obedience, trust, love. Here's the final one. Instead of giving you the word for it, I want to describe it first so you understand it, because it's a very critical concept. So pretend that you got a job, all right? You got a new job. And on this job, you have to do 5 tasks. They give you a memo, they give you a piece of paper, and the paper says, here are the 5 things you need to do. A, B, C, D, and E. These are the 5 things I need you to do every single day. Spend 1 hour on A, 1 on B, 1 on C, 1 on D, 1 on E. You've got a 5-hour job. Fine. At the end of the day, you go to your manager and say, he asks you, how was your first day at work? It was pretty good. So how was your work? I did pretty good. I did E, F, G, H, and I. I did them to perfection. The manager is a little confused because he didn't ask you to do E, F, G, H, and I. What did he ask you to do? A, B, C, D, and E. Why didn't you do what I told you? Well, I felt more comfortable with E, F, G, H, and I. And a lot of my friends were doing E, F, G, H, and I because I knew them from before. I was so happy to see them. So I spent the day with them, and I really enjoyed the work. Thank you for the job. Are you going to be keeping that job for a long time? No. You better get your act together. Because when you get a job, what you have to do at the job is not determined by you. What you have to do at the job is determined by your employer. When you take a class in school, who is playing that harmonica in the back? A who? Oh, the warning thingy. Okay. That's good. It's very soothing. It's very very European, Eastern European. Anyway, so what was I saying? Something about a job. There it is again. So now when you go to school, okay, you go to college and your college professor says, listen, I have had those epic college professors in life. They walk in and say, most people fail in my class. The first thing the guy says, he doesn't say, hello, good afternoon, students, welcome to my class. Most people fail in my class, by the way. If you want to survive, here's what you got to do. And he'll tell you, you better pass at least 2 midterms, and you better give me 2 term papers. They better be on time, and if they're not on time, you're going to fail. Here are my office hours. I don't have any. I don't care about you people. Like that's the guy, you know. Now that guy, if I want to survive his class, what do I have to do? To survive his class, do I come up with my own assignments or do I have to follow his assignments? My teacher and I have a relationship. But that relationship, what I need to do in that relationship is being defined by the teacher. At my job, I have a relationship with my employer. But the terms of that relationship are being primarily defined by who? By me or by my employer? By my employer. But, in all of these cases, there is still room for some negotiation. There is some room for negotiation. So when that professor, that epic professor, gives his speech, somebody might raise their hand and say, are there any extra credit assignments or anything? Like, they could do that. There could be some negotiation. Isn't that true? Now, for example, in a marriage, there are 2 people in a relationship in a marriage. And that relationship is actually almost entirely made up of negotiation. You have to figure out who's going to pick up the kids from school and who's going to drop them off, and who's going to do the groceries and who's going to do the laundry and who's going to do this and who's going to clean up the house and who's going to take care of the bills and who's going to check the mail and who's going to this, who's going to that. You divide the responsibilities, right? That's what you have to do. And at least in a normal household, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to negotiate these things and figure out who owes what, who has what responsibility in a household. Now, we have a relationship with Allah. He is master, we are slave. Who gets to decide what my responsibilities are as a slave? Do I have any say in this? Actually, none. I have no say in what this relationship will look like. So this last item is the terms of the relationship. The terms of the relationship. In other words, I don't get to decide what is worship. I don't get to decide what love means. I don't get to decide what trust means. I don't get to decide, any of it, what obedience means to Allah. He will decide that for me. I don't come up with my own definition. Now this is very important, guys. Are there people who believe in God? And then they say, well, to me, loving God means that you have to be a good person. Well, to me, obeying God means that you have to drive under the speed limit. And to me, trusting God means that you just buy organic food. Are there people who start their relationship, when they talk about their relationship with Allah, they start with, to me? To me? This concept that you have a relationship with Allah, but the terms of it will not come from who? You cannot say, well, to me, this is what this relationship means. It's not up to you. He's the master. He gets to decide. You are a slave, which means you have no status in this relationship. You don't get to decide. To me, I think one prayer is enough. Do you have the right to say that? No. No. I don't know. Hajj is interesting. I mean, it's in Mecca. But to me, I think if I went to like Hawaii, I'd appreciate Allah's creation a lot more. Because there's ocean and there's trees and there's, so I would be far more grateful to Allah if I was going to Hawaii instead of Mecca for Hajj. Well, it's nice that you feel that way, but it's not up to you anymore. It's not up to you. The terms, what does He want from you? What is expected of you will not come from you, will come from Allah. And I can tell you with a great deal of confidence, there are a huge number of Muslims in the world who do not understand this concept. Who feel that their relationship with Allah is actually based on what they feel it should be. Maybe some of you have that concept at the moment. I'm not blaming you, but maybe you've had that idea. Well, here's what I want my relationship with Allah to look like. I'm willing to give Him Friday prayer. I'm going to give Him that much. But what I do in high school is my business. What I do on my mobile device, under my fake profile, that is password protected from my parents, is my business. That's not Allah's space. That's my space. Even though my space is no longer around. But you see what I mean. In other words, you get to decide where you will listen to Allah and where you won't listen to Allah. You'll negotiate, sort of. Where He has a role, where He has a say in your life, where He doesn't have a say in your life. There are people who say, I'm going to go to Hajj every year, but I'll still run my haram business. So what am I willing to give Allah? Hajj every year. But the liquor store makes way too much money. Not willing to give that up. There are other people who say, I am willing to give Allah a long beard. But I'm not willing to give my daughters their share in inheritance. Even though that's in the Quran too. But I'll give him a beard, I'll give him. I'm willing to memorize the Quran. I'm willing to do that. But this whole calculation of zakat thing, it's not for me. But I'll memorize the Quran. And I'll listen to His recitation all the time. What are people doing? They're taking some stuff that they feel like taking, and they're rejecting other stuff they don't feel like taking. You understand? This is not up to us when you accept Allah's slavery. And so if you start defining the relationship, then that is also a form of shirk. There's shirk in obedience, there's shirk in worship, there's shirk in obedience, there's shirk in trust, there's shirk in love. There's also shirk in who gets to define worship. Who gets to define it? Who gets to define slavery to Allah? The definition of it, the expectations of it will have to come from Allah. You start sitting at the negotiations table, it's almost as though you feel like you're a partner in this with Allah.